Okay, good morning. Today is the last daf of Bava Basra. I will be sorry to see you go, Bava Basra, but we will come back to you, as we will say at the very end here. Let me share my screen and we will get started. We are again on the very final daf. We are at the top of 176 A, Kuf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph. And today, again, we finished Bava Basra. In the final Mishnah of Bava Basra, which we saw yesterday, we saw that a handwritten IOU can be enforced,
Right.
but only from unencumbered property, meaning property still in the owner's possession, and not from encumbered property, meaning real estate that the lender sells after the date of the IOU. So it is different from a document. If I have a document that Stan and Ken sign on that says that I owe Mark money, then not only could Mark collect from things that I currently own, but based on the date of that document, Mark can collect from anything that I might have sold after that date, because that's the power of a written loan document. A written loan document is considered publicly known. And this is on some level the first system of filing mortgages is what you hear in this Gemara. This whole concept of encumbered properties is the basis for our mortgage system. So really quite remarkable that this was,
2,000 years
2,000 years ago. Exactly.
Saving
But-
it to rent.
So I say similar to rent, yes. So now we're going to pick up with the fifth line of Kuf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, and the Gemara wonders what happens if I write an IOU to Stan, and now a court certifies it. So we know that before the court has certified it, Stan can only collect from property that's in my possession. But do we say, and we're going to see this in detail in the Rashbam, because today is the last day of Rashbam, because tomorrow when we begin Sanhedrin, we go back to Rashi, and Rashbam gives us a little bit more words than Rashi. So Rashi's amazing for his conciseness, but Rashbam has been wonderful, a wonderful partner for us because of his verbosity. We get a great detail in association. So we're going to see that. So let's dive right in. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line. Hotzi alav ksav yado. This is a quote out of our Mishnah. If you take out a handwritten document, meaning a handwritten IOU, all it's got is my signature at the bottom, no witnesses associated with it. Shehu chayav lo, that so Stan takes out that document, the IOU that I wrote him. We say that you can only take from unencumbered properties, from properties that are free to be taken, meaning the things that I currently own, that I'm currently holding. So Baimine, Rabba Bar Nasan mi Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Nasan asked Rabbi Yochanan, Rabba Bar Nasan asked Rabbi Yochanan, Hulksak ksav yado beveis din mai. What's the story if we authenticate, if we make it a chazaka that it's valid in court? What's the story? So let's take a look in the Rashbam. Rashbam, third line at the top of the Rashbam. Baimine Rabba Bar Natan, Rabbi Yochanan, Huksak Savyadu bebeis din mai mahu la'achar zman shemasar lo halo v'lemalva. That after some time, we're in the Rashbam, last of the wide lines at the top of Kuf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph. So after a certain amount of time that I've given Stan an IOU with my signature at the bottom, which also could be called the check, and I've given it to him, Ksav Yado, I gave him my handwriting. Shehu chayav lo mamon. I said that I'm obligated to pay Stan some money. Ubaba beitin, and now we all come to court. V'hoda bifneihem, and I admit in front of the beitin. Shehu ksav yado, v'kasvu lo beitin henpek and hua nikra ashrasa. So asharta. So I admit that this was my handwriting in front of the Beit Din, and the Beit Din signs on it a certification, a legal attestation, the kiyum hashtar, and so therefore the contract now becomes a formal contract approved by the court. So what do we say? And then Rashbam explains, continuing on in the Rashbam, now we're in the fourth narrow line of the Rashbam on Kufay and Vav Manav. Miyam Rinan, do we say, Harehu Me'ata Kishtar, that now it's as if it was a true document, meaning that you could even collect from property that I sold after this date, Sheyesh Bo Eidim, because there are witnesses on it. Now, those witnesses are the judges, but they're effectively witnesses. And we say that now you can collect even from encumbered property, because we say that even though this IOU does not include any encumbrance on my property, in fact, it can't include an encumbrance because it's not publicly known. So, but now that there are witnesses on it, we have a general principle that if, in fact, one omits an encumbrance language in a document that is written and signed, it's a mistake of the scribe and not actually omitted, and we treat it as if it's there. So now this IOU that I wrote to Stan, that now has 3 signatures of the Beit Din on it, that says that this is actually a valid contract and can go directly to enforcement. Now, does that mean that they can be enforced against my real property? So to kol star malva umachira shechosmin bo edim, because every document of loan or sale on which there are witnesses, govim mishabdei, you can collect even from encumbered property, meaning property that I sell to somebody else after the date of the document. Ki'ilu katav bahen achrayos, as if the document actually said a guarantee. O dilma, or maybe not. Maybe dilma kiyum Shtar Eino Moil Lashum Shtar. Maybe the certification of the document does not actually facilitate the document becoming a document that allows for collecting from encumbered property. Elulahachziko Bebeitin. All it does is strengthen the nature of its existence. Likamot Shahaya Mikodem Lechain. It strengthens what you were able to do beforehand. Sheilu Yamutu Edim. Olova, now if the witnesses or the borrower dies, lo yuchol own shtar zem mizuyev. Nobody can claim that this was a forgery. Who? The Beit Din kiamuhu, because the Beit Din already confirmed it. The yigba bo hamalva, and so as a result, and the malva will be able to, and the malva is holding it. The gamzel lo yigaveh. Ella Mibnei Chorin. And so, notwithstanding the fact that you now have the signatures on it, all Stan is going to be able to collect. This is exactly what he was able to collect beforehand. Now he just doesn't need to have any legal arguments associated with it. Ulahachi ahani beitin shelo yuchol lomar ein zek savyadi. And the point is that now he just knows that I can't possibly say that this is not my handwriting. So that's the question that we have. And so now we see the answer. Amar Le, Rabbi Yochanan responds to Rabbi Bar Nasan and offers the following answer. Even though the borrower's handwriting has now been confirmed by the court, he can still only take property that the debtor owns currently, and he cannot take any encumbered properties. So now the Gemara asks a question, and just to confirm our location in the Gemara, we are 9 lines down, last word on the line. So Masav Rami Bar Chama asks a good question. Well, one second, listen to the following. And now this is a Mishnah. This Mishnah is in Gittin, Daf Pei Vav Amud Aleph, and this Mishnah at the very end, even though the Mishnah is from Gittin and it's going to mostly talk about divorce documents, the very end of it is going to talk about other kinds of contracts. So listen to the following. Shlosha Gittin Psulim. There are 3 kinds of divorces where it's not a valid divorce. But if the woman gets married and has children based on this invalid get, we do not say, unlike a typical married woman, where we would say that her children would be mamzerim, here the children are legitimate. The children are not considered bastards. The Eluhain, and these are they. One, ksav b'ksav yado ve'ein alav edim. What if the husband writes the document and doesn't have any witnesses sign? Now, Rashbam is going to tell us that there are witnesses that to the handing over, but the husband himself writes the get himself. He fulfills all the requirements of the get, except that he never got it signed. So yeshalav, so that's case number one. Yeshalav edim ve'ein bozman. Or there are witnesses, meaning everything is cold, is completely great with the document, except that they forgot to put a date on it. But so that's the question. So in that situation, also, it's not, you shouldn't do it, but and if you do it, you need to get a new one. But if, God forbid, the woman thought that she was divorced and therefore married somebody else and already became pregnant as a result, it's not going to, we're going to allow that divorce to still be considered effective with respect to the children. Yesh bozban ve'ein lo bo ella eid echad, or if there's only one witness on it. Again, and so let's take a look. Ve'ein alav eidim, Rashbam. This is now about 15, 20 lines down in the Rashbam narrow lines. Ve'ein alav edim, ella shenimser la bifnei edim. In all of these cases, the document has been handed over in front of witnesses. The edim isira karti le b'di'evet. That we say that although it initially we would not ordinarily allow somebody to just have witnesses on the handing over of the get, we know that there's a debate on that issue. That some people say that the key element of a get is the witnesses who see it being handed to the wife, and others say no, it's not the witnesses being handed, it's not those witnesses, it's the witnesses who sign the document. Well, if in fact we don't have those sufficient requirements on the document itself, we can say b'diavad, that only in a post facto way, that if in fact that's what happened, well, then we'll say it's okay. So hare elu shlosha gittin psulin. Again, the Mishnah continues that these three gittin are not valid, are invalid, but the imni says havlad kasher. But if in fact she gets married, then the child is considered kosher, is considered legitimate. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Rabbi Elazar, of course, is the one who says that Ede Mesure Karte, that actually what we focus on is just the witnesses who hand it over. So he says, Aval Pisha Ein Alav Edim, even though there are no witnesses on the document, Elish and Asano La Bifnei Edim, it's only been handed over in front of witnesses. Kasher, it's totally okay. Meaning, as Rashbam points out, kasher lichatchila. He's the one who holds that all you need are the witnesses on the handing over. And so as a result, he says it's totally okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And now here's the key wording that is why we're bringing this question. The gova, and if it's a different kind of document, if it's a loan document, gova minachasa mishubadim, you can collect in this kind of situation, a document without witnesses, and it's been handed over in front of witnesses, you can use that as a basis to collect from encumbered properties. Well, 1 second, an IOU that has been certified in court should at least be the quality of an IOU that has been handed over in front of witnesses. So let's take a look in the Rashbam. This is, the Rashbam is right opposite the two dots, the second set of two dots in the Gemara. It's right opposite the Tosfos, a little bit lower down than the Tosfos, Mishas Ksiva on the left-hand side. So now we're on the back to the right-hand side. But Gova Minachasa Mishubadim, you can collect from encumbered properties. Kolomar, V'im Shtar Malvahu. That the end of that Mishnah is telling us that if, in fact, this was a loan document, Oto Hoshtar HaKosov B'Ksav Yado, which is like a document that was written by the guy's hand, the Ein Bo Edim, and there's no witnesses on it, so it's just like a handwritten IOU. Ela Shemasru B'Fnei Edim, but it was handed over in front of witnesses. Govim Nechasim Mishubadim. You can collect. Stan would be able, if I gave Stan the IOU in front of Mark and Moshe, Well, now all of a sudden, Stan can collect not only from my property that I hold, but even from property that's meshubad that I sold to somebody else. V'hachim efarish hasam Rabbi Yochanan aliba de Rabbi Lazar, and over there in the Gemara in Gittin, Rabbi Yochanan explains Rabbi Lazar as follows: "Beparakam evi tinyana." Sha'afilu bishar shtaros. Go. You don't have to. You could go in a few minutes. We're almost done. Gova afilu bishar shtaros. Gova minachasim mishubadim be'edi misira bilvad. That when you have a document that doesn't even have witnesses on it, you can collect from encumbered properties, as long as you have the witnesses that say that I handed it to Stan.
Gotcha.
Alma hotzi alav ksav yado shehu chayev lo umasru b'fnei edim. So as a result, if I take out a document, a handwritten IOU, and I hand it over to Stan in front of witnesses, gova mishavdei, that Stan would be able to collect from encumbered property. The kol shekain, and here's the key to the question, and certainly that should be true. Huchzuk bevesin, if a beit din confirm the validation of the document. So shouldn't this enable Stan? Shouldn't the certification of the document enable Stan to collect from all of my property? So no, not necessarily. Keep your finger in the Rashbam so that we don't lose our place, and back into the Gemara. So, no, the answer is, and now we're just one line above the two dots in the Gemara, right opposite right next to where it says the Aleph in the Gemara, in parentheses. Shiny Hasam, no, that case is different. Because when I wrote the document, it's clear that my intention was to become subject to the lien, that I wanted my properties to be encumbered, and that's why I specifically handled the IOU over to Stan in front of witnesses. So take a look in the Rashbam. Shiny Hasam de b'shas ksivahu d'shibud nafshe. Kishenichtav hashtar. When the document was written, nichtav kedei l'masru b'fnei edim. I wrote it in order to hand over in front of witnesses. Sheyehud edim mesiras. That there should be witnesses to the handing. B'makom edei chazima, and those witnesses should substitute to witnesses on the document. Hilkach Kavan Dil Rabbi Elazar Edi Mesi Rikarti. So therefore, because that was my original intention, when Rabbi Elazar says that the witnesses to the handing over are the things that make a divorce effective, Ki'ilu Nechtavu B'toch Hashtar. It's as if the document was literally signed. But our question is not about a document that was originally written to be handed over in front of witnesses and therefore treated like a signed document, but rather it was just an assigned IOU. Ba'alma, a regular one, shmo shalova chasam bo, that the name of the borrower was signed on it, meaning I signed at the bottom. Shezem masar lo b'makom Hoda'ah, that this I hand over to you in place of an admission, shelo yuchal lachzor, so that you know that I can't retract it. The lichpor bo, and deny the lomar parati, and say that I actually was paid you off. Kolzman shachasima biyad amalva. As long as you're holding on to my IOU, I can't tell you that I paid. Shalonas shtar beloshon shel shtar she'edim chasumim bo. I didn't use the kind of language of a document that witnesses sign on it, and so therefore va'achar zman hechziku. Now after time, we end up hechziku b'beis-din. It ends up being confirmed in beit-din. The kisha halvaho kemalva alpeh hevi havi. And as a result, when I borrowed the money, it was like an oral loan. V'sulo matzu beitin b'kiyuman la'asoto shtar. And the beis-din doesn't have the ability to create a document that causes it to sheyesh bo achrayas, that causes there to be a guarantee. So nechasim achrayas nechasim, a guarantee on my property. Sharei lo ladazkein nichtav mitchila, because that's not why I wrote it from the beginning. So then Rashbam adds v'kein nira beinai. That's what I think is the right answer. Shmu azu v'kein ikar, and this is the real explanation. And so that is the story. So the bottom line is that if we want the Ede Mesira, the witnesses to my handing it over, to be valid, then I have to write it just as if the witnesses had signed on the document. But if I just write, I owe Stan $100, and then give him this $100 document, then I owe him $100, but he can only collect from property in my possession. Okay, that brings us to the next excerpt from the Gemara. So the Mishnah noted that if a guarantor appears only after the signatures, then the lender cannot collect from encumbered property of the guarantor, and Rav teaches a related ruling. Wow. So Arev Hayotze la'achar chitum shtaros, that if they guarantor signed afterwards, so then the lender can't collect from encumbered property, meaning of the guarantor. So let's take a look. So Amarav kodem chitum shtaros, but if the signature was before the witness is signed, so I write a document, and on that document it says, and Stan is my guarantor, wow, and then Mark and Moshe sign that document. Well, that means that Stan is the guarantor because he signed the he was he knows what he's doing. So so then when I borrow the money from Ken can now collect even from encumbered properties of Stan. Meaning, if I don't have the money to pay back the loan to Ken, the loan from Ken can not only collect from me from Stan as the guarantor, but Ken can even collect from any property that Stan would sell after the date of this document. So la'achar chitum shtaros. But if the signatures come first on the document, and only then does the guarantor appear, well, then then you can only collect from the guarantor's unencumbered properties, right, meaning you have to collect from stuff that Stan has, because Stan's putting of his name was only in order to be able to collect from that. It's not as if he's subject to the document rules. So Zimnin Amar Rav, but other times Rav would say, afilu kodem chitum b'shtaros, that even if Stan's name appears before the signatures, Eino gova element of chasim b'nei chorin. We can that Ken will only be able to collect from his unencumbered properties. So kasha derav adarav. These two opinions seem to conflict. So lo kasha. Nope. We can resolve the difficulty. How do we resolve the difficulty? Ha de kasaba ploni arev. So if in fact the document just says that Stan is the guarantor and has no connection to what comes before, then we're going to see that Stan does not have the ability. Then Ken won't have the ability to come to Stan's encumbered properties. But when Rav said that that Ken will be even able to collect from the guarantor's encumbered properties, the kasabay Ploni Arev, that and Stan is going to be the guarantor. As Rashbam puts it very nicely, third line from the bottom of the narrow lines in the Rashbam, Ploni Arev, Hifzik Ha'inyan. Because we start a new sentence, it separates the concepts. The Dilma lo asade edim ela ashtara dila'el lechud. Maybe the signatures, maybe the document was really being signed by the witnesses only about point number 1 and not about Stan's serving as a guarantor. Now, it doesn't make sense to say the opposite, because it makes no sense for witnesses to sign only about his being a guarantor and not the loan, because without the loan, there's no guarantee. Yeah. So it's got to be that they're only witnesses to the loan, and maybe they're not witnesses to the guarantee. And now the next Rashbam, Ploni Arev, Vav Mosiv al Inyan Harishon. So now the Vav adds to the prior point, the Al Hashtar, and therefore the Al Ha'aravut Chatime Sadi. So now it's clear that the witnesses are signing both, because the two concepts are connected. And how do we know that this is in fact the rule? Because now we get another opinion. The Rabbi Yochanan says echad zeh ve'echad zeh ein gova elam menachasim b'nei chorin. No, really, no matter what, you can only collect from unencumbered properties. The aval gaf the chasa bei uploni ariv, and even if the person wrote that Stan is the guarantor, we would only be able to collect, Ken would only be able to collect from unencumbered properties. So Masiv Rava objects to the ruling of Rabbi Yochanan that said that no matter what, you cannot collect from encumbered properties. Because listen to the following brisa. Hustle. That if witnesses sign on a greeting in the get, then it's invalid. Meaning that if the get has all of the language of a get, but then at the very end of the get has a greeting that says, send my regards to my former wife, then maybe the witnesses are only signing to that, and they're not signing to the first part, to the get part. So as a result, we're worried. Kaishinan shema al she'ela shalom chasmu. We're worried that it's going to be that they only signed in connection with the greeting, and as a result, that's why we're not going to make it consider it a valid get. Varam Rabbi Abahu, and Rabbi Abahu made clear, lididi, according to me, or to me, mi parsha le mine Rabbi Yochanan. This brisa was explained to me by Rabbi Yochanan, where it said she'ilu. If it was a new inquiry that they said, and they said, ask about my wife or ask about this person, well then puzzle. She'ilu, but if that request for greetings was connected to what came before in the document, it would be a valid get. So one second, if Rabbi Yochanan says that the word and will make the get valid, so why should the word and not make it such that Stan is my guarantor and allows Ken to collect even from encumbered properties? So Hakanami. So the actual meaning, take a look in the Rashbam. Ushi'ilu kasher. First of the medium wide lines at the bottom of the Rashbam. Sha'al hakol ha'idu edim. So it's clear that the edim signed on the whole thing. So similarly here, when we say and Stan will be my guarantor, it should be that the witnesses are signing on the whole thing, and Ken should be able to collect even from Stan's encumbered properties. Wow. So Hakanami. So actually, yes, we can say that in fact Stan that in that case, if we say and Stan is the guarantee, that's the situation. Because of Ploni Arev, that in fact it's where when did Rabbi Yochanan say that you can only collect from unencumbered properties? That's where it was Ploni Arev. It's where it was a new sentence, just like Rav. Well, one second, Ihachu, Ahaki, Hainu Rav. Well, then Hainu de Rav. Well, now Rabbi Yochanan is saying the same thing as Rav. So Ema v'chein Rabbi Yochanan. So okay, yes, in fact, that's the case. Rabbi Yochanan is saying the same thing as Rav, and don't say that it was as if it was a new statement. We should say, and similarly, Rabbi Yochanan said also, and that way everything is consistent. Okay, and now the last little bit of our Gemara before we finish. So Maisa uva lifnei Rabbi Yishmael. A case came before Rabbi Yishmael, and this, again, the Mishnah shared Ben Nanis's view that if the guarantor appears after the signatures, then the lender should not be able to collect at all from the guarantor, as the guarantor was simply trying to stop the creditor from strangling the debtor. And Rabbi Yishmael, who had said that the lender could collect from unencumbered properties, had praised Ben Nanis. So the Gemara needs to clarify, because maybe you might have thought that Rabbi Yishmael retracted his statement and now was saying that actually the guarantee that appears after the witnesses is no guarantee whatsoever. So we say, Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Afal pi shekiles Rabbi Yishmael es Ben Nanis. Even though Rabbi Yishmael praises Ben Nanis, halacha kamoso, the halacha is still like Rabbi Yishmael, meaning that you can collect from unencumbered properties, even if the signatures come after the witnesses. So they ask the question, B'chanuk mali amar Rabbi Yishmael. Well, one second. What if, in fact, Ken was actually trying to strangle me, and now Stan, out of the generosity of his heart, says to Ken, listen, stop strangling David. I will pay if David doesn't pay. So now, do we say that Rabbi Yishmael would agree that in that situation, since Stan is just trying to stop Ken from strangling me, that in fact he would not be a guarantor? Or do we say no? Even in that case, we're going to treat him as a guarantor. So Tashma, the Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Chalok Haya Rabbi Yishmael Af Bechanuk. That in the case of Rabbi Yishmael, he disagreed even with bananas, even in the case of the one who's being strangled. So halacha kamoso or ain't halacha kamoso. So do we say that the halacha is like bananas, or is it like Rabbi Yishmael in the case of a strangulation? Meaning, again, if Ken is coming to rescue me, and the only reason he offers to be my guarantor is because he's trying to save me from strangulation, what do we say? So Tashma Dechi Asa Rabin Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So when Rabin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bava, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Chalok Haya Rabbi Yishmael Af Bechanuk v'Halacha Kamoso Af Bechanuk. That not only that, but when Stan says that he wants to be my guarantor in order to save me from damage, it is a valid guarantorship. And that highlights the nature of a guarantor, that actually, if some benefit comes to Stan, we're going to say that that's a guarantor. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Ganuk, in the case of the strangled, V'kanu miyado, and he performed a kinyan, mishtabed, he's obligated. So meaning if one became consented to become a guarantor in order to save somebody from being strangled, and then he performed the kinyan, that's when he's obligated. So actually disagreeing with what we just said, it's only if he makes a kinyan. Well, that implies that in general an arev does not require a kinyan. Upliga de Rav Nachman, and that argued with the Rav Nachman. The Amar Rav Nachman, as we turn to Kuf Ayin Vav Amud Bet and the final lines of Maseches Bava Basra, Arev de Beistin who de lo ba'ib kinyan, that it's only a guarantor in a court who comes in front of a court that does not require a kinyan. As Rashbam says, will be the last Rashbam that we'll be learning together in Bava Basra for this cycle. That with that benefit of being the one that the Beis Din is relying on, or that is being viewed as trustworthy in Beis Din, to come a hamni le Beis Din, that the Beis Din is trusting him, gamar umishabed nafshe. That is how he is being definitive and being obligating of himself. But haba alma ba'i kinyan. But in general, Rav Nachman says that you do require a kinyan in order to become a guarantor. But yet we just saw that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that we do not require that. And what is the final halacha? This is how the Gemara ends. The hilchasa, the halacha is Ariv b'shas matan ma'os lo ba'i kinyan. Somebody who becomes a guarantor at the time of the loan does not require any kind of kinyan. Achar matan ma'os, but as soon as the money has been handed over, boy kinyan, now you need a kinyan. Okay? Arev de Beis Din, lo by kinyan. But a Arev in Beis Din never needs a kinyan. Wow. Because based on the benefit of the fact that the court has believed him, has trusted him, that's why he will obligate himself even without a kinyan. Hadran alach get pashad uslika la maseches bava basra. Hadran alach get pashad uslika la maseches bava basra. Hadran alach get pashad uslika la maseches bava basra. We have now finished Bava Basra, and God willing, for those who are in person are welcome downstairs, as we're going to have a siyum with the Yeshiva Chovevei Torah. And for everyone else, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, because tomorrow we begin Sanhedrin, and we're going to answer the question. The first Tosos is going to note in Sanhedrin, we now know there are lots of cases to be brought. How do we adjudicate? Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. How do we adjudicate them? How many judges do we need for that? Stay tuned to tomorrow's daf. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the hana and benefit of having completed one of the longest Masechtot and one of the longest series of Masechtos, the 3 Bavas. As we saw, that when you learn the Bavas, it is a symbol of intelligence and wisdom by being able to understand these laws, and we should just be able to take that wisdom with us throughout our days, and God willing, to our learning of Sanhedrin starting tomorrow. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Mazel
I'm gonna come
tov.
downstairs.
So we could do it
Yeah.
downstairs, okay?
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
You got it.